our first keynote speaker of the day, who also happens to be our patron, Professor Adiba, to provide us with an insight on medical research in Malaysia. Professor Adiba is currently the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Professor of Medicine and Infectious Diseases at the University of Malaya. She is our very own national pride by being at the forefront of global infectious disease research, with a special emphasis on HIV/AIDS treatment pathways.
Hold on, we're not done yet. She has represented our country in various noteworthy meetings and conferences organized by the likes of the WHO, UN/AIDS Council, as well as the ASEAN, and have also contributed to the infectious disease care in Malaysia through the establishment of the Centre of Excellence for Research in AIDS, CHERIA, which conducts high-impact research and provides HIV care training for healthcare professionals. Today, Prof. Adiba remains an influential figure both locally and internationally.
On top of that, we at Malaysian Medics International would like to express our deepest gratitude for her unwavering support towards our movement. Thank you so much, Professor. You've been amazing. Thus, without further ado, Professor Adiba, everyone.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Elena and Jonathan. As patron, I get to pick when I speak, isn't it? One of the privileges. Okay. So it seems like a strange thing to start off with, but never mind. I hope to be able to share with you the many opportunities that are available in Malaysia for you to pursue not just a clinical career, but a research career in the future, I hope. It is extremely important, I think, to partake. Of course, it's not for everyone to partake in healthcare-related research, because I truly believe that it's only through research that you can continue to provide the best of care, and it also, in many ways allows patients, particularly with clinical trials that we conduct, access to latest inventions and drugs and so forth. So for that and many other reasons, research is part and parcel of good medicine. The other is, I think, in terms of personal reward for research. Honestly, I love being a doctor, and I love connecting with patients in the ward and in the clinics. But after a while, I think, when you get to my age, and you want to do more than just see patient every day, and to be able to do research to answer bigger questions and to hopefully contribute towards bigger changes is very fulfilling. My own involvement in research actually was almost quite accidental. When I came back, well, of course I was participating in clinical trials before I returned to Malaysia with the earliest antiretroviral therapies. Now I feel so old, so long ago, when 3TC, the Mivudin, was first released or designed for treatment of HIV. It was called the CSER trial back in 1993 as a combination with AZT, 3TC. So I was assisting my consultant then in this trial, and kind of cut my teeth in research with that. But when I returned to Malaysia, it was, in starting the infectious disease unit and all that, there wasn't time to do research. And seriously, my involvement only came in 2001, I think, when I actually got quite sick and tired of seeing people with HIV, not because I got sick and tired of seeing people with HIV, and because they became infected through drug use, but I felt that something needed to be done. Particularly with my training in Australia, I hardly ever saw injecting drug users who were HIV positive, and to me it was really crazy that we were seeing all these people infected for want of clean needles and syringes and methadone. But I knew that in order to do something about it, we had to have local research, we had to have numbers, we had to do all that to prove to the government that something needed to be done. So quite serendipitously, there was a call from the National Institutes of Health, no less. I tend to do crazy things like this. I sort of don't start small, I kind of start big. For a research grant, for an international research grant called CIPRA at the time. I had no idea how to do it. I had no idea it was going to almost kill me to put together this grant alone, and something completely unheard of when you put together a research grant to the NIH, and requested for this money from them. And you know, my research grant got, because it goes through a stringent peer review process, and I was awarded this grant. Which then, so the gist of it was to look at HIV and substance abuse in Malaysia. To cut a very, very long story short, we used this grant to bring together experts from Australia and local people, and we did what's called a rapid situational assessment and got the numbers, published a monograph on it, and an article or two, and use that to basically advocate to the government and related agencies, and which led to the agreement from the government to allow us to do methadone or opioid substitution therapy and needle exchange program. I'm making it sound so simple. It wasn't that simple. So this was in 2005, and I firmly believe if it wasn't for the research and you know, presenting the numbers in a local data and being able to argue it based on that, we wouldn't be where we are today with HIV prevention amongst drug users. And it certainly has paid off. The number of people getting infected due to drug use has dropped drastically. And in another piece of research that we did recently, one of my students worked with colleagues from the University of New South Wales through some funding from the World Bank, and we looked at this program, the methadone program, the needle exchange program, over the last, from 2006 to 2013, since its implementation. We crunched the numbers, and lo and behold, what it showed is, in terms of cost effectiveness and return on investment, the modeling study showed that through this program from 2006 to 2013, we have managed to prevent at least 13,000 new HIV infections. So if not for the methadone and needle exchange program, we would be seeing far, far more people infected with HIV, something that could completely be prevented. And we did some, what do you call it, health economics modeling, and what we found was in terms of savings, we saved the government 40 million ringgit in that period of time, just in healthcare costs alone, just in preventing people coming to the ward to receive treatment for cryptococcal meningitis, retinitis, etc., ARV therapy, etc., etc. We haven't computed the cost savings in terms of allowing, with methadone, allowing them to return to employment, not going back and forth in prison and so forth. If we add that, I'm sure the savings would be more. And so we're using that to advocate to the government to fund more needle exchange and methadone program, etc. Of course, I tried to get them to give me a pay rise, but that didn't work. I said, I've just saved you 40 million ringgit. No, it didn't work. So, so that's just an example of you know, how research can really impact on policy and make a big difference. So for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about more broadly, just to share with you my experience and why you know, research is crucial in terms of improving healthcare and impacting policies, etc. And all of you, you know, can do it. There are so many areas. I just happened to pick something actually very difficult to do. My mother said, "Why are you working with all these drug users? I sent you to Australia. I thought you were going to be a cardiologist." And you know, anyway, so just that stigma remains, and she's, I think, quite secretly proud of me, even if I'm working with drug users and prisoners. So in general, the research in Malaysia in the last few years has really improved. By virtue of the government investing more money in research, and as you can see from the graph here, it has really taken off, particularly since 2007 and particularly in the last couple of years. And the orange line is the one for Malaysia. Okay, and we have, of course, we are not able to match Singapore just yet. Sorry, that's South Korea on the top there, and also Singapore, simply because I think the investment in terms of money doesn't quite match how much Singapore and South Korea have put in. But you know, we've overtaken Thailand, and yeah, we've overtaken Singapore too in terms of the numbers. But so this has been quite an achievement, and it just shows that money talks. Okay. Okay, so it's not just in absolute numbers. In terms of citations, we've also improved tremendously. MRU stands for Malaysian Research Universities, of which there are 5. So UKM, UPM, UTM, USN have been designated by the government as research universities. What that means is that we get a bit more money that is channeled for research. So certainly that investment, I think, has paid off very well for the government. All right. As some of you know, is really trying very, very hard to try and get ourselves in the top 100 universities in the world. We are now at 167 or so. Apart from the funding that we get from research RU grants, we've also in the last, since 2011, received a very large block grant from EPU, from Ministry of Higher Education, in the name of High Impact Research Grant, HIR, which was close to 600 million ringgit over 5 years, which is a lot of money. I mean, of course, compared to NIH grants and EU grants, it's small, but certainly for Malaysia, I think it's the largest block grant ever given for research. So what that has done, as you can see, is really, really spurred a huge expansion in terms of research production as measured by publications. So it's gone, I don't know how many 100%, I'm terrible at math. So from 595 in 2008 to 2,500 in 2013. So amazing jump in terms of research productivity, which you know, in the past, Chula and Mahidol were certainly leading us in research and production, but now we've easily, you know, produced twice the number that they did. So I get the Dean of Chula, Dean Udom, saying, Dean Adiba, what have you been doing to produce so many papers? So it's really nice. So one of the ways we measure research output is not just by the number of papers, because what you also want is the quality of the papers, and that can be measured by something called the H index, which is a calculation of citations, which means how many people have read your paper and actually cite you for their paper. And then that's computed against how many papers you have, etc., etc. So we not only love to compete with Chula and Mahidol and NUS and NTU and others, but we of course like to compete with the other four research universities, and we're doing well in terms of having a decent H index. And proud to say that the best academic talents are in UM. I didn't do this slide, okay? Someone gave it to me. So 80 with H indices of 10 to 19, and 19 with H indices of 20 or greater. So the biggest concentration of academic talents is in UM. And UM medical students, put up your hands, please. Alright, and we undoubtedly have the best clinicians, right? And the best preclinical teachers in any medical school in the country, correct? Alright, a bit more propaganda. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of publications comparing to other medical schools, so as you can see through the years, it appears blue on your screen there. Now we still can't compare with NUS, that, as I said, is putting a lot of investment in research and in terms of building infrastructure and big collaborations with the likes of Duke and so forth. But you can see the rise of ISI publications at Faculty of Medicine. So we've essentially doubled our publications in just 3 years, from 418 to 849. So this has been quite an effort by all my faculty. So this is so in terms of research output from the 5 universities in Malaysia, when we compare ourselves to the world, where are we leading in what sort of fields? Chemistry, engineering, material sciences, and clinical medicine are where UM is on the world map in terms of when they go and do these indicators from different. Thomas Reuters, I think, does all this analysis, and these are the four areas of strength at UM currently. Okay, back to money. The reason why we've been able to double our research productivity just in 3 years, just in 4 years, is this. This is the High Impact Research Grant, and as I said, there's another funding stream called the UMRG, so through the RU grant. So all in all, we probably had about 100 million to play around with, and what it allowed us to do was to upgrade our research facilities. We have very nice high-end research equipment, both in the HIR building and also at the faculty, and allow people to collaborate and do interesting and exciting things. So what the faculty is doing is, is to try and focus our areas of research. And this is what we've decided to do, which is to focus in areas of infectious disease and immunity. Although the country has moved on in terms of being an almost developed country, but we're still faced with many communicable diseases, traditional communicable diseases, and of course dengue. And so I recently cannot let go of this, but apart from that, it is my own specialty. Cancer and drug discovery, public health and non-communicable disease, and we really need to focus on lifestyle diseases, chronic diseases such as diabetes, metabolic obesity, and so forth, and aging and regenerative medicine. So in each of these areas, there are very, very active groups that are doing research, and the aim is to combine the natural laboratory that is the PPUM, with over 1,000 inpatients every day, and over 1.2 million patients that come to PPUM as inpatients and outpatients each year, provides a natural place to do good research. And on top of that, I think what's exciting about research in Malaysia is particularly in medicine, is the diversity in our population. We have Malays, Indians, Chinese, Sabah and Sarawak, Orang Asli, etc. So that, particularly with the need to understand genetic basis for disease and so forth, quite a lot of researchers from around the world are very interested in our natural pool of diverse population that can provide good insight into understanding the genetic basis for diseases. So that's one area that we hope to work on. So infectious disease and immunity, the strengths are of course in tropical infectious disease, particularly dengue and others. My own team at Sharia doing HIV work focusing on the marginalized communities, drug users, prisoners, sex workers, and men who have sex with men. And cancer, there's a very strong group working on pediatric cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and prostate and gynecological cancer. So we get a lot of patients come to us for treatment, and apart from doing research, treatment-related research, of course it gives an opportunity to also do molecular-based work, which is, I think, what is very exciting about working here, and the ability to marry the two. Public health and non-communicable disease, I touched on. Just yesterday I convened a meeting to try and get different people who are working on diabetes and obesity in pediatrics and adults, and the people in the lab working with animals, looking at chronic kidney disease in animal models and obesity in animal models, just to get them to talk to each other and hopefully build a big research program on diabetes. And also collaborate with colleagues from Kuwait, which the Dasman Diabetes Institute in Kuwait, and also colleagues from Boston, from Harvard. So, trying to link people together to do exciting intercontinental research. And then finally, aging and regenerative medicine. There's a big group being funded by HRR that's looking at aging, not just from the clinical point of view, but from the social aspects of aging and the laws that may not be so favorable to those to elderlies, and so it's a real multidisciplinary research looking at aging, the immunity of aging, the biological basis of aging, etc. And NOSRL, the Orthopedic Research Institute, is doing very nice work looking at tissue, regenerative tissue engineering with some acoustic colleagues from Liverpool. So there's a very, very robust, these are just some of the areas, some of the research programs that's happening here at UM. So these are the different research centers that's here at UM, the Faculty of Medicine. So just running through, like what I said, so systems biological studies, through the recent investment in from the HIR, we've been able to equip ourselves with better equipment, so confocal microscope packs, Illumina, etc., to do fancy immunological studies. I touched on the stem cell research that's happening here with the orthopedic group, less so with embryonic stem cells. Bioengineering, so we're working with colleagues from Faculty of Engineering to do bioengineering research, more starting more with things like prosthesis and orthosis, but hopefully we will be able to do, this is something I'm really interested to encourage through a visit I did at Trinity College, Trinity University, sorry, any one of you from there? Trinity in Europe? There's a very, very active group there of researchers in bioengineering who are working very closely with their colleagues from medicine. It's something I would love to try and emulate here, so that our colleagues in bioengineering can assist us with designing devices for whatever, whether it's for asthma or whether it's for patients with stroke or whatever. I've touched on tropical disease and HIV, xenobiotics and drug screening, pharmacogenomics. Again, as I mentioned, because of our diversity, this is the natural laboratory for studying pharmacogenomics, looking at variations in various genes in terms of response to treatment or in terms of development of adverse drug reactions. And so Professor Horin in the pharmacology department is leading this studies in pharmacogenomics. So these are some of the central laboratories that we have here. And we've just recently built or not built, but renovated and upgraded our animal research facilities that have recently been accredited for such research. So we hope to get, together with the larger community, a better animal breeding and experiments facilities, and inshallah in a few years to come we'll be able to do primate studies and so forth. Right now it's limited to mice and rabbits and smaller animals. So of course, ultimately, the aim is to translate research findings into clinical applications or into public health policy, as I hope I illustrated right at the beginning with my own work. And the other big component of our research is the Clinical Investigative Center at UM, which is dedicated to performing clinical trials. At currently there are more than 100 clinical trials going on, and we've been awarded the best clinical trial center, I think, in the region, or certainly in the region last year. It's a very, very active clinical trials unit that does phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials for many, many different diseases. So it's very exciting place. Cancer research I've touched on, and now we've started facilities for biobanking tumors. So surgeons, etc., who remove tumors and do biopsies are then able to bank these tumors for future research. So that's also very, very important. And of course, in order to do this, we have to train the next generation of researchers. Like any universities, we provide masters in science, masters in public health, masters and PhD degrees. For clinicians, it is difficult to combine being a doctor, being a specialist, with being a researcher, particularly in a very busy environment like UPUM, but it is certainly possible. And what we, meaning I and those in management at the faculty, are really trying to do is to establish a track for clinical scientists, clinical academics. And we're working with colleagues again from Liverpool, Simon Frostick, and colleagues from Boston, from Harvard Medical School, to try and design a program that will allow you all to enter into this track. So the aim is, you do 2 years of housemanship, then 3 years, in your third year, enter into the clinical master's program. At the end of 4 years, which is the clinical master's, you are a specialist in XYZ. For internal medicine, generally you would have to do another 3 years, like if you do ID or cardiology or whatever, you would have to do another 3 years. So we try to see if one out of those 3 years will be the beginning of say a PhD, start of your PhD, whether it's in clinical epidemiology or in basic sciences or whatever. So this is what we're trying to do, because as the main academic center, or the leading academic center in the country, we must build future clinician scientists that can lead in developing clinical research in all its different fields, whether it's translational research or public health or whatever in the country. So I hope some of you are thinking about this, because as I said, when you get to my age, you want to do more than just see patients every day. Believe me, it's more exciting. On the big picture side, of course, you get to contribute to science and to improvement and all that. But on a tiny fulfillment of it, when you see your name published, it really gives you a buzz, or it still gives me a buzz. And when you get invited to speak internationally, etc., that's generally not going to happen unless you get involved in research. So just continue to be a clinician. Not that I devalue my colleagues who are clinicians, because I totally, just 100% clinicians, because I totally understand how difficult it is to combine the two. But on the other hand, if you're willing to do this, I think the rewards, both personal and to the greater good, so to speak, is much larger. So I encourage all of you to really think about doing research. And I think there will come a time when, right now, of course, we need a lot of specialists and clinicians, but there will, of course, come a time when jobs are going to get more difficult, and particularly if you're going to stay overseas, which you're not, right? You're all coming back. As you know, your consultants in the UK or whatever, most of them have an academic background, because that's how they get chosen. Okay, but apart from that, I think it's just intellectually more exciting, I think, to get involved in research. Okay. And as I said, we are on par with the best in the world. We have had publications in the Lancet. For NIPA, of course, was our first publication in the Lancet, and followed by in the New England Journal of Medicine. This was more than 10 years ago, 13 years ago. And I think that you know, of course, when we looked after patients with Nipah, of course, and the whole outbreak, it was, that's a different presentation altogether. But I think after this Nipah outbreak and the discovery of the virus here at UM, and you know, publishing in New England and the Lancet, I think it spurred many things. One is a multidisciplinary teamwork. In that list of names is you know, are people from neurology, ID, radiology, microbiology, etc., which shows that you know you can't do this sort of work by working alone. You have to have you know, you have to work in a team. But it also, I think, following that, it really did spur a lot of good research at the faculty, and continues to spur lots of good work. Now, just before I end, you know, I started off by showing you, you know, our pivotal Nipah publications, but the reason why I chose Prof. P.C. Tan's paper is to illustrate a few things. So I said to you, it's not easy to combine research with a busy clinical practice as we do here at PUM, but Prof. P.C. Tan from Obstetrics and Gynecology, although he's not the first author here, but he's been instrumental in leading this research. And just yesterday he defended his PhD and got the PhD with distinction based on his research. And what it takes is, you know, of course you need some research training in terms of methodology and etc. Of course it takes dedication and commitment and a real interest in it. But also what it takes is to just, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy research. I mean, not all, but what Prof. Tan did was to try and answer a very simple question of almost like a folklore. Does having sex whilst you're pregnant bring on early labor, right? Which of course, you know, I think to the general public that was the general view, that we have more sex, we have our children earlier, especially if you are your pregnancy is already prolonged. But Prof. Tan, through a series of research, including this very large trial of 1,200 people who were asked to, who were randomized to either have a lot of sex or sex with normal, or something like that, and to record that and to see whether coitus expedited the onset of labor. And lo and behold, his series of studies showed that it did. So I'm using that to illustrate, you know, a number of things. A, it's possible to be involved in very high quality research. It was published in the British Journal of ONG, which is probably one of the top journals in obstetrics and gynecology. B, you can do a lot of good research just by having that intellectual curiosity in answering what everyone thought was, yeah, you know, it makes sense kind of thing. And C, you can get a PhD out of this. And be on the NBC News. This was in November of last year. So mentioned in New York, no less. The NBC News, so actually sex doesn't induce labor, study says. We are a little disappointed that we did not find an association, said Dr. Tan Peng Cheong, an obstetrics and gynecology professor at the University of Malaya and one of the authors of the study. It would have been nice for couples to have something safe, effective, and perhaps even fun that they could use themselves to help go into labor a little earlier if they wanted. So there you go. You know, you too can do sexy and interesting studies and be mentioned in New York NBC News. All right. As another example of cutting-edge research is this one. Prof. Vicky, who's now the head of surgery and was previously head of neurosurgery, still head of neurosurgery, but he's just come on board as the head of surgery in general, and he's been playing with 3D printers. Your generation would know very much about this, right? 3D printers, and using that, they are creating models that can be used to do simulation training for neurosurgeons. Instead of practicing on patients' skulls and brains, they can practice on this 3D models. That too got mentioned in the NBC News. If you and your brain were undergoing the knife, wouldn't it be comforting to know that your surgeon had practiced the exact operation, location, procedure, and all on something else, it says. All right, so we certainly have world leaders in many areas here at FOM, and we welcome any of you who wants to do perhaps a brief stint during your breaks or whatever to see what's going on around here. And of course, just a little bit of propaganda for myself. I don't normally big ticket myself, but just to show that we too, this whole, I cringe when I say things like Malaysia Boleh, but I was very proud to host this IAS conference last year with Françoise Barré-Sanusi, the discoverer of HIV and Nobel Prize winner, here in KL, that attracted 5,000 scientists from around the world. And we had really groundbreaking science here discussing HIV cure research. Of course, the Boston patients were announced, the Boston patients whom we thought at the time were cured of HIV, was announced at this conference, and the new antiretroviral WHO policy was also announced at this conference. And that wouldn't have been possible, they wouldn't have invited us to co-host IAS, wouldn't have invited Chiria at to co-host this conference, if not for the fact that they recognize the good work that we do. So it is possible. How many of you volunteered at this conference? Any medical students? Because we actually had quite a lot of, you did, right? It was a nice conference, right? Okay. Anyway, thank you for volunteering. So it was the first time it was ever held in Asia. So last thing, okay. As I said, I don't normally big ticket myself, but this was a real honor to actually have a science, the scientific journal, to give recognition for the work that we do at Chiria in HIV and drug use. So it is possible to rise to the challenge to be amongst the best in the world. It just takes dedication, hard work, a bit of luck, and support. And if you do good work, you'll get recognized. And as I said, the research is quite apart from being featured in Science. Will provide you, I think, with that real edge, and of course, ultimately, it's so that we contribute to improving patients' lives, policies, and not just for Malaysians, but globally. So I hope I have convinced you that yes, it is great to be a doctor, it is great to be a specialist, but it is greater to combine the two, being doctors and specialists, and doing research, because ultimately you'll be able to do more. One of my mentors, who is a gastroenterologist, strangely enough, in Melbourne, in Sydney, who's a harm reduction expert. He started Sydney's first needle exchange program. Kind of said to me, Auntie, believe me, you get tired of seeing patients every day. And when you see patients, you improve their lives, you improve the lives around them. But if you do research and share that knowledge and use that knowledge, you will ultimately impact more lives. and whether it's discovering that gene X predisposes someone to Parkinson's, which then leads to development of drugs that turn off that gene, or whether it's doing what I've been doing in terms of working with prisoners. Let me just tell you about quickly about the impact that we've had in prison. We've been working in Kajang prison for the last 7 years, and when we first went in, we were seeing at least 2 to 3 deaths a month in prison, mostly from advanced HIV and TB. And we've instituted a TB program, the screening program, we've instituted antiretroviral therapy and methadone, etc. And this year, so far, they've only had 1 death in prison, and that was not disease related. So it definitely can make a lot of impact, and should make a lot of impact. And I hope I've convinced all of you that research is something that you really want to get involved in after you've got your MBBS out of the way and your FR whatever out of the way. All right? So with that, thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Okay. Sure.
Alan from Perdana University, Perdana.
Okay.
And actually I have a question related to your HIV research. Your statistics shows that now the more prominent way of transmission of HIV has turned from drug use, sharing needle, to sex transmission. So may I know what is the current research or work related to this?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that question. So basically, I think there are 2 modes of transmission. One is from people who use drugs who are already HIV infected and transmitting them to their sexual partners and wives, etc. And we actually have a small but nice study. One of the big things that we're doing here is tracking the molecular virology of HIV. And we have a very nice group working on that. And we've shown that with development of new subtypes of HIV, of which there are now 7 in Malaysia, that if you track it using molecular epidemiology techniques, we have shown that it has evolved from people who use drugs into their sexual partners and wives and so forth. So not only do we have a sort of population-based example of it, but definitely at the molecular level we've shown that as well. And secondly, the sexual transmission is also through commercial sex workers and transgenders. And we're in the process of completing a study with some colleagues from Yale that has shown that the prevalence of HIV among sex workers in KL and Klang is something like 13%, which is extremely high. And the prevalence of syphilis is even higher. I think it's something like 40%, particularly amongst transgenders. Don't quote me on the numbers because we're still analysing that. But even before, when we did the integrated biobehavioral surveillance, the prevalence among sex workers about 4 years ago was already 9%. The unfortunate thing is in Malaysia, HIV epidemics all within what we call key affected populations. So started off with people who use drugs, and then now we're seeing a serious epidemic among sex workers and transgenders, as well as men who have sex with men. When I first returned, I hardly saw any, MSM gay men with HIV. Now, you go to the ward, there's lots of them. The last study we did with MSM was about 5-6 years ago, and at that time it only showed 3.8%, but the last one was already 9% prevalence. This is around KL. And so it's just going to go higher and higher, and it's no surprise because we don't have any, unlike in drug users where we give in clean needles and methadone, we don't have any sort of effective interventions for sex workers, for any big government-funded interventions because of the usual sensitivity. So Dr. Lim, who's a postdoc at Churia, is doing some research with colleagues from Hopkins, actually, Baltimore, to look at using not exactly WhatsApp, but I don't know what, some kind of handheld device or social media to try and do some behavioral intervention through that. So these are the sorts of things we want to move towards. So instead of just documenting prevalence and risk factors, which I guess we all know what they are in the most part, but doing interventional studies to try and effect change. Okay. Morning. Okay, so the question at the front is when you graduate as medical students, how do you get involved in research? There are two groups, I guess. There are some of you who have suddenly found, thankfully it's only a small proportion, that you never wanted to do clinical medicine in the first place, right? Yeah? You can be honest. There's quite a few in my faculty who are like that you all thought it was a great idea, or your parents thought and still think it's a great idea, and you've suffered through these last 5 years, and you thought, oh God, I can't stand going to the wards and the clinics after all. And if you're going to do clinical medicine, you're going to have to do 2 years of housemanship and, go through all that drudge. And so for some of you, I know it's just not for you, talking to patients and getting a history, getting out in the middle of the night and all that. So for those people, I would still encourage you to do your housemanship, all right? Because otherwise you will not be able to call yourself a doctor. You won't be able to practice. I mean, you can call yourself a doctor, but you won't be able to practice. And even if you want to get into, say, clinical trials, it's very handy to have the MBBS and if it's in Malaysia, to have the MMC registration. If you're going to be doing clinical trials, you may not be acting as a doctor, as a normal doctor, seeing patients, but you are still seeing them as a doctor and enrolling them into clinical trials and looking after them, and it's slightly different. And you won't be able to do that unless you've got your MMC registration. So I would advise that by and large, even if you absolutely hate seeing patients, and you've just come to that realization now, unfortunately, stick it out for another 2 years, if you can. But if not, if you're absolutely, definitely sure that, no, clinical medicine is not for me, don't despair. There's a whole load of things that you can do. And I just said, bench research, lab research, But one advice about research is you must pick an area that you have an interest in. You cannot force yourself to, because it's in for the long haul. You can't just do 1 year you want to study viruses, the next year you want to go and do tissue engineering. It's not like that, and it's usually, I just got a really scathing review of a paper I wrote 2 days ago that I read the first few lines and I thought, oh, I'm not going to respond to this. It was really scathing. So it still happens, that all this disappointment and all that. So you've got to work in a subject matter that you're absolutely interested in, whether it's lab research or epidemiology or whatever, right? So if you want to do lab research, then then you would need to do a master's in science, either by coursework or by research, which is usually 1 or 2 years, and then move on to do a PhD. And if you want to do sort of public health research, then you go in and do Masters of Public Health, which takes a year or two, which gives you the grounding in biostatistics, epidemiology, etc. And I think public health is a really very nice field of medicine that's often undervalued. But for those of you who are interested in sort of international NGO work or WHO and that kind of stuff, that lends itself very well to that, and research in that. So basically, basic science research, clinical research, public health research, and translational research, which connects basic science to clinical research and public health research. No. You start off as a research assistant, so you don't need to get a master's. You find a mentor, a supervisor in an area of study that you're interested in. See who's doing good work in what, and then you try and get a job or intern as a research assistant, and then do a master's. I should say that there are a lot of opportunities in Malaysia for, in terms of scholarships for research. The Ministry of Education has what's called the Scheme Latihan Akademik Bumi Putra, SLI, I'm not sure what's the I for, Scheme Latihan Akademik, I don't know what, for the non-Malays, but here at UM, those two, it's one scholarship, allows you to do research, to do a PhD in an overseas university, and it provides you with the tuition fees and of course living allowances, etc. It's a fantastic opportunity, something to look into if that's but that's later on, because you need to get a master's first and that's PhD. But I think Malaysia is extremely generous in terms of providing opportunities and scholarships. And then, of course, there are all the private institutions, private agencies as well that do provide that kind of opportunity. Any other questions? Yeah? No more questions? Okay. So thank you very much. Have a good conference, and hope you learn and network and have fun.
All right, thank you, Professor Adiba, for that very inspiring speech. You have definitely given us something to think about right today, and you have opened our eyes to the endless opportunities that Malaysia has to offer in terms of research. So thank you for that. And right now we would like to invite Lau Ziyang to present a token of appreciation on behalf of MMI and Talent Corp to Professor Adiba.